Okay, thank you so much, Nadine, for having me, and so great to be with all of you and in this fantastic space. Of course, coming from somewhere, you wanted to have my perspective. Being Indian, I tried to reflect on how to sort of share with you how I see things, especially not having grown up in a context that begins with Dean Norman. Okay, so I'm going to attempt this. Even I would like to begin to question what is crisis versus crisis, you know, because the way I look at crisis, first of all, one thing where we can agree, and then maybe the rest we don't need maybe agree. I think we can agree that when there is a crisis, I mean, I want to talk about the good news. That's who I am. I'm an optimist. I think crisis means if whoever is using the word, we can question if it's a crisis or not, really. But if you feel it's a crisis, that means whatever is going on cannot go on business as usual. So isn't that a good news, first of all? Secondly, the way I call something crisis is I always try to look, is it a man-made crisis? A man-made construct? Is it a crisis? Or is it a thing like a tsunami that we could have done nothing about? So that's what I actually call a crisis. But if I often ask myself in the first world countries, when we call even something a problem, I ask, is it really a problem, or are you just being a little bit inconvenienced to step out of your comfort zone and you say, oh, God, it's a big deal, I have to change, you know? Because why did I have this opinion? Because when I came to Germany, I didn't feel so much different because I, as a Homo sapien, I always see that we are more common than different. I don't go around the world thinking that it's not like how it is in my house. So that means I'm somewhere else. I don't think like that. So also we are used to diversity as being normal. And we are used to each individual also being different, while we are all the same. So in Germany, I was often, when I show my slides, before you will ask me those kind of questions, I do want to point out that everybody says, wow, this is amazing work, but wir sind ja in Deutschland. So I was not understanding, what are they associating Deutschland with? You know, is it Deutschland means that we are going to be practical and therefore we cannot be idealistic? Why? Are they two contrary things, to be idealistic and to have a vision? Is it not allowed? You know? So coming from there, I think there are two, like Sergey said, I don't need this. What I need is a clicker. Sorry. I forgot to show the slides. Before I sort of talk about rethinking anything, I want to just continue with what I was happy to hear from Sergey, that crisis is an opportunity. So for me, I think every crisis has an opportunity to build knowledge and to build community, because crisis makes us not perpetuate old lazy habits to go on and on and on, but make us think what the whole point is. And crisis makes us come together because we realize the illusion of our individualism, and then you have to be together like we saw in COVID. So building knowledge and building community while building buildings. It's possible. So I have brought in Nadine, from your perspective. We are asked to rethink materiality only because our habits have created a man-made crisis of an enormous dimension. So the crisis is only that we have to adapt or we have to do things differently. And in Germany, I do feel that standards have to be rethought. because you have all spoken already about overregulation and about innovation constrained attitudes, where even in schools you cannot think out of the box. And I say box in Germany because of the quadratisch praktisch. Even the box has to be orthogonal, you know. So I want to talk about, when you ask me to talk about Indian background, I had the great opportunity to witness how we have done things in old civilizations before colonization and before industrialization came through globalizing vehicles and imposed themselves on us, but we get to see the layers. So I wanted to question a bit the implications of those things. And maybe it is more about undoing than doing in a place like Germany. Maybe. We can discuss that later. But I feel when you often talk about environmental problems here, there's a lot of discussion only about natural resources. Oh, this is all, the world is ending, everything is getting over, the natural materials are finite. So we talk about resources from the panic of them getting over. But resources are not only external. Human resources are also resources. Our intelligence, our vision, our ideas, our muscles, our care, whatever human thing we apply, it won't pollute. It will only make us evolve. So the more as finite the resources are, the more infinite human resources are. So to be resourceful is infinite. And if we don't experiment, we don't evolve. And the whole point is to evolve, you know? So I would like to bring that into the discussion. I don't think materiality, when we rethink materiality, I don't think we have to only talk about material as if earth versus concrete and what is a performance and all that. It's not the material who is bad or good or moral, you know? They are just where they are. Every part of the earth has a different material. You know, if you have our ancestors built with whatever was lying around. If there was only ice, they built with ice. If there's stone, they built with stone, etc. So the material aspect has, for me, the way it will be rethought is not by thinking about the material, but thinking about how the human in the last 100 years changed their relationship to the material through each changing technology. How we sourced material from scratch and what we did with it. We are just moving molecules around since generations, you know. Well, that's what architects are doing. Our strength is not about which material fetish we now have. It is about what kind of voids we are creating for us to feel good. And as the human evolves, the architecture is evolving. Materials are molecules that are being moved and repositioned. That's how it has been. What is luxury is not just how expensive that material is, but how the human cultivated their eye, their mind, their knowledge, their skills and everything to produce a more refined thing. And architecture, as we know, it stays much beyond our lives. A stone will remain a stone. It may not remain in the building how you have positioned it. So in my initial work in India, I tried to see behind the layers of material sourcing, and I saw how the new architect is being pressured by the building material catalogs to only do like a Lego version of architecture, where in olden days you got Lego blocks and at least you made some free things out of it. And now even they give you an exact car and a manual for the child to exactly build with Lego only that one car, and to go out thinking they created that. And the architects also are thinking they created. They are assembling pieces. There's a huge indoctrination going on, and I wanted to go to the root of it. So I started looking at how, before industrialization, materials, for instance, a brick, was manufactured by humans before all of these regulations and habits, and how bricks were the kilns were just assembled during baking, and when the fire is done, the thing becomes a field. So in modern kilns, about 40% of the oven, the energy is only reheating the oven or being absorbed by the wall. How expensive are really, and not only in money terms, such industrial scale productions? I wanted to get at the root of it, what it does to the humans who had the knowledge to use lime and not a ready-made Portland cement, and use whatever's around to be a cement, you know, and how the way they made things, how it affected the society. And so what we make makes us. So I'm more concerned about what are we becoming at the result, as a result of how we are making whatever it is. And architecture is a very big one. So in the context of India that you just spoke about, this type of industrialized product which has landed, you see in the foreground and background, the two of them very well interspersed everywhere. In which one do you think is worse? I still don't know. You know, is this, I mean, the high standard house, which is everywhere, even in Germany, the standard is become so high, of course it's not affordable. Why are you surprised? A lot of, in the ancient times, it was colonization that led you to spend resources that were not in your plot. And we, of course, we didn't get to use those resources, but I don't know who is worse off even, you know? The thing is, we are all in it together. The very expensive apartments that you cannot afford in Mumbai, and by the way, even in Germany, the bigger and bigger percentage of your income is going into a shitty apartment. You're spending it and you don't even know which is your place, and you don't like it. And till the end of your life, you will not have paid it off. So instead of building a house and getting on with your life, like our ancestors did, and the birds and the bees and everybody does, the house has become a thing like you live in order to one day have a house, to pay off your debts. So obviously something is wrong. Also, very simple materials, regulations, international ones, have come all over the world now, and they are not even letting a brick, which was an ancient material they've used for Notre Dame, for Hagia Sophia, huge spans, Guastavino in New York. They are today not even allowed to carry even a little load. You have to put reinforced concrete because the norms. I mean, I'm not against the norms. I'm saying the norms are needed, but let's not stop doing the math and finding a way. For example, this Wärmedämmung, you don't have to put it. Do the math, calculate your U values, and do a good thing, you know. So both are responsible. But the whole industrialization that made us do things, and over-standardization, over-regulation, and all of that made me always think, there's a chase for efficiency. Don't employ humans. Disengage the human. It's too teuer. Don't have humans involved. Just put all the money into products, and then it should go automatically constructed. So what was the aim of that? To have more time. Do we have more time? What's the point of all this efficiency? I used to ask myself, what is the point of doing efficiently things that really need not be done at all? We're just chasing an efficiency, and then where is the advantage of that? We don't see people with more free time enjoying their life. And I don't see rich countries. When you all were sitting here and talking about how there's no money, I think, oh my God, seriously? If you don't have money, or when you have money as a rich country, what are we doing with that money? You know, why are we not having a good life? It's a very simple question that we have to ask, you know. So I want to ask a few questions, which are very obvious. 30 years ago, we knew already. I graduated knowing this. I started my practice with 23 years age because I was naive, and I just started doing. Like Odile was saying, you know, like, and do we take risk? Are we courageous? Yes, we did all of that, you know, but people were calling us alternative, not architect. They were for years calling me alternative this and alternative that. But all those obvious questions, like you have to build with local materials, whatever all the sustainability people say. The problem is not that we don't know it. We know all those things for 30 years, but we are still not doing it. So really, I don't want to talk anymore in conferences about what is sustainable, because we all know it. We all know it. At least the food scene, they managed to go forward with eco. At least it's Betsalba today. So I want to pose a few questions. What has it costed me? Like, what, even though it's normal to eat a mango from my own tree, it was not possible. And cashews, it's cheaper to eat it, to come to Germany and buy it in Lidl. It literally is, okay? Because of the way we are looking at economy. And because we are not paying the real costs. We are shifting the cost somewhere. That's why it's not possible. I faced these hurdles that if I try to build a project with all the common sense, with the material lying around in my own site, everybody, even in India, tell you that this is too expensive, this is not going to work. I have to import the stone from some industry, and then I have to prove how big is that office, how big is my office before they give me a job, and all kinds of irrelevant things I have to take care of. It has not been easy, but a lot has been accomplished. And in the first 10 years or so, I had built quite a few projects, around 100 projects. Not all are worth celebrating, but we were providing architectural solutions to people. But always, I learned to look deeper and deeper to look around me what is literally there in terms of material and skill. And I try to use whatever is there, because that will bring abundance. How to create abundance without capital. So that's what I have been chasing. And I've invested in my knowledge and the knowledge of others. That's the part I change. I don't try to follow what my traditional, vernacular things. I try to use that as a bar to not do worse than our ancestors. We have to perform better, because that's evolution. We can't afford to do something worse than they did. And through that, we have managed to produce a lot of contemporary buildings which showcase through engineering how to use even more intelligently, how can we celebrate the human potential and produce architecture with the humble means, but that we feel good in. And for many years later, you will reuse all of those things, because they are all natural, healthy materials, and they are very flexible to be adapted. The second question in this context is how to develop local skills today. Are we, as a society, allowing room for all that? Or are we creating obstacle for anybody trying to do things in a healthy way, saying that you are an Ausnahme? So, sorry, some of these words I only know in German and never used in my vocabulary, because they keep telling me you're an Ausnahme, you're an Ausnahme. And I'm like, Ausnahme is exception, Odile. So I tell myself, like, okay, this is an area you will have to address, because skills are plenty. And one way I learned from the colonist kind of things we were even taught in school, a lot of these people with a lot of skills were called unskilled labor. Why? They didn't have university degrees. So we also grew up thinking that there is no skills. I go to a place, there's nothing. What can I do? So I mean, for example, when I was, one of my very first projects was about discovering who are around me, what can they do, and how can they contribute to the architecture I want to create with local materials. And there were potters who didn't know how to sell their pots, because now we don't use pots for cooking. We use steel, in metal. So I started diverting all those skills to ensure their livelihood rather than threaten them. We are threatening the livelihood of those who actually know things, even now. And I see that a lot in the West. So, for example, in my home, from 3 months, I'm waiting for one small thing which a plumber can just fix. But there's in high demand, and you have to plan 6 months ahead when you're going to have a crisis, and then take an appointment. So nobody knows how to just come in. And I thought Germany was all about Selbstsystem, and all the students like 30 years ago, they were painting apartments, doing everything. All the children were growing up with that Wasserwaage and all that. Like, well, not Wasserwaage, what is that called? That water? Wasserwaage. So they all knew it and nobody knew it. So I had a big, high expectation of Germany. And I realized that people are they are being discouraged to put their hands in the matter. My department in the TU, my Fachgebiet, I've given the name Making Matters. Because it matters how you make architecture. And that's where the socio-economic thing comes in. Anyway, so I started getting them. They didn't know how to sell their pots, so I started making architectural building materials, for example. And as you can imagine, I had a lot of problems getting engineers to calculate those things. And they were telling me that this is all not possible, and all the engineers were saying, and I was young, so they were anyway telling me, you can't do it. Like, forget about it. They were all saying, forget about it. If you come up with any idea. So then I used to ask them, very politely, I was young, it can't be done because of gravity or because you don't know how to do it. I should try politely. Nowadays, I often don't change the design, but change the engineer because I'm much older. So I did all this type of things. And because I needed support from my craftsmen, I used to do a lot in one-to-one because I realized that architects tend to mystify how they communicate. But when you explain, everybody is there to support you. And I started producing all this kind of architecture. This is, by the way, my own house, because that's where I could take more risk. I'm showing this project. So I produced architecture with this kind of thoughts. And even the bricks that you see here are the handmade ones, because by then I realized that what we were taught to think as the bad bricks, because they were weaker, they were rough, they were not equal, whereas it was in other places we were being shown what is being done in Europe, and the wire cut bricks and industrial bricks were coming in. I had discovered that the good bricks are the bad bricks. So and the other way around, so I wanted to celebrate that the weak bricks, I'm going to make back the architecture with that. And I wanted to celebrate all these skills, and one strength went to another. I started using those traditional cooking pots by making lost formwork to save 60% of steel in the concrete, because the Schalung, the formwork, is usually a very expensive area, and that's why people don't do the more efficient thing. So I started using these and create, use people's skill to anchor projects to the local materiality. Another question is how to build upon vernacular knowledge, not to dismiss it completely, but also there's a reason why we can't repeat it exactly that way. There are new needs, but not give up on optimizing those things. So when this is another project of mine. This is actually my first home where the bike and the solar panel cost more than I think the house, because as you can see, it's very simple round wood. But you realize another thing, that most people, and I also learned it while doing this house, that most people would use a rectangular timber section habitually. What it really means is that the same round section of a 3-year-old tree will have to become a 25-year-old tree, so that you can cut out a rectangle and then use it. So you waste a lot of time, a lot of wood, and it would be good if I have to make 2,000 identical houses, but in the end it's one house and every tree is different. If I directly use it, I learned a lot of things of this sort where it's very difficult to explain, because if you show this architecture, people will not see those thoughts because we are so conditioned. The other area is how to engage people and enable participation. There are people who do not have enough money to take up a bank loan. They don't have the basic part. I have been that person. So I know what I'm talking about. And if the technologies should not alienate people from participation, few experts, but a lot of things should be kept simple enough that if those who can only avail of sweat equity, they should be able to contribute to their own homes. So there are some co-housing projects that I have done, and started bringing my knowledge from the details to the larger urban projects. I think this is an area we have to think even in urban areas to allow, like in the Selbsthilfe schemes that we had for Berlin's renovation after the wall came down. I think there are things to be done even in today's time in that direction. So the other thing is how to support local material, not just use local materials, but also to create building elements or building things locally. Because in the 15-minute city, we should also think about transportation of building materials and all the large networks. This is a project, talking about being radical is probably the most radical thing I investigated. It's called baked in situ mud houses. It involves building mud houses out of mud bricks with mud mortar and treating it as an oven and filling it with other bricks so that when you do the firing, the waste heat can be tapped and a mud house can be converted into a brick house even without needing cement. So it's a local thing, economy. I mean, after 3 or 4 days, you can harvest all the products you have inside and you can make it available, and it doesn't have to be restricted to only bricks. You can make, there's so much in ceramic, from wash basin to, water pipes, furniture, everything, tiles. So that is an area, to create room for experimentation and contribute to local economy through building material manufacture. Regarding high energy materials, we don't have to give up on cement and concrete. Climate change is a reality. A lot of coastal areas are going to need that. I don't think we should create the polarized landscape of earth versus cement, because actually knowledge is required to optimize all the materials. And I almost have, since I've come to Europe, I have been working a lot on these high energy materials, because that's where you can make a very big difference. The other local materials are anyway more benign. So I've been working with ferrocement, which involves very thin reinforcement through like textile like meshes that are only plastered. They are only 2.5 centimeters thick, and there is a lot of opportunity to produce modular systems that I've been doing, of course in my context, trying to see how very light the same things are used very lightly. Yes, I want to just say that urban waste, especially till we fix and not produce so much waste, has a huge potential to be absorbed in architecture permanently, because as architects we are interested in the voids and not we don't have to mine materials. We can make architecture out of whatever we found, even from the urban waste. I think including in the building processes, I think we can skip that, because that's not so important. There's just some pictures to assert that. I would, as a conclusion, just say that I think what my hope is in Germany, what impact a bunch of people had made 100 years ago through Bauhaus.
Yeah.
If we can have something like that, really, where we don't make it uncomfortable for any child to think freely. I would put the focus on not business plans, but on imagination. The thing that we have to preserve is human imagination and human capacity to experiment and human capacity to adapt.
Thank you very much.